So structured literacy, this is the methodology that it's called. It's known as the science of reading in public schools. It's also known as something called Orton-Gillingham. So, or abbreviated OG in some of the homeschool circles. So all three of those names are the same thing. They are using structured literacy methodology. So what does structured literacy do? So, or what does it look like? It's basic, it's direct, it's step-by-step teaching of how sounds connect to letters. And they do this what's called a bottom-up approach, meaning that we start with the sounds. So think back to that word recognition piece of the threads of literacy that we were talking about before. So think back to that particular area that has to do with being able to recognize words. So it starts with the sounds, right? It started with phonological awareness. So those are the sounds. So when we're doing structured literacy, we're starting with, here's a particular word, not in sight, but just in sound. I'm going to tell you a word, and I want you to be able to rightly divide the sounds that you hear in that word. So we're starting with the sounds. And then we're moving over into being, what do those sounds look like in letter form? So we're looking at that and we're mapping that in the brain. And then we're working on that in word format. And then we're moving over eventually into meaning. So you can see it's starting from the more um, dissected part with the sounds, and it's moving all the way into meaning. So we're not just jumping into meaning. We're trying to first be able to map in the brain those letters and sounds. So this provides the foundation for every child who is struggling to be able to read, to decode, and then also to spell. So this is a very important component, is that structured literacy isn't just reading, it's also spelling, because the two go hand in hand. So reading is, I see that particular letter, I know what sound that makes. And spelling is, I hear the sound and I know what letter or letters that makes. So the two go hand in hand. So any type of structured literacy curriculum needs to be teaching both the reading and the spelling side of a particular skill. Look at your curriculum. If it's not doing that and you're in a homeschooling environment, I would highly, highly recommend that you seek out other resources that are particularly working on both the reading and the spelling aspect of things, because the two are so intertwined. And our brain is able to really latch on to that so much easier when we're seeing it in reading and in spelling format. Okay, so here's a particular quote. And again, this is by the International Dyslexia Association. This is from their structured literacy literature, specifically effective instruction for students with dyslexia and related reading difficulties. So here's the thing. Structured literacy teaching is the most effective approach for students who experience unusual difficulty learning to read and spell printed words. So this is their particular quote. They have found that this particular methodology, it's basically their gold standard. They say, if you have a child who has dyslexia or has dyslexia-like symptoms, meaning issues with that word recognition piece of that threads of literacy rope, if they're having particular difficulties in that area, structured literacy is what is going to be most effective for them. All right, so here we go. This is a typical structured literacy session. So we talk about all these, things that we work on. Well, what does that actually look like? So what you're looking at is an actual structured literacy session. So at Beautiful Minds Learning Center, when we're working with particular kids, this is what it looks like. If you're doing a structured literacy session, beginning to end over a period of 45 minutes, this is what this looks like. So we start in the very beginning on the left side with phonemic awareness, and then we go into letter sound knowledge, so that letter sound correspondence, and then we're going into reading words. So basically, when we've mapped the sound, or we can correctly work with that particular sound, we're going to now map letters that go to that sound. That's the letter sound knowledge. And now we're going to practice that. So now we've learned that. Now let's look at that. What does that look like when we're reading words? So we give both real words and we also give nonsense words. And the reason being that we don't want any compensating strategies to happen. So meaning that some of our kiddos come in and they already have some word banks because they've memorized, right? Go think about that stealth dyslexic. They've memorized what words look like, certain words, easier words, right? And so we don't want that to be at play. So we're going to give you some real words, absolutely, to practice, but we're also going to give you nonsense words because it's going to force your brain to decode. You can't have memorized the word because you've never seen it before. So it's going to force your brain to decode, to use your decoding strategies to do that. So we're going to practice that. We're going to practice that skill using in reading words. And we're also going to practice that skill spelling words. Like I said before, it's reverse, right? So now we're going to tell you a word to spell that's within your ability. So it uses all kinds of skills that you will have had already by that point. And you're now going to use those skills and you're going to spell the words. And we have very specific strategies for how to do that. So it's not just, okay, here's a word to spell it. So we actually have a specific way of doing that, where we have the students do a step-by-step thing, and they learn that step-by-step procedure so that when we come to spelling words every single time in our session, they know exactly what way to do that. And our specific procedure for spelling those words actually helps them to be able to map their brain the way to spell. So it just becomes an automatic thing. And it's very simple. It's just basically starting out with the sounds. What are the sounds that you hear? And you're mapping out the sounds. And then you say, okay, now tell me each of the sounds. So in the word map, okay, we're going to go, okay, how many sounds do you hear? App. Oh, I hear 3 sounds. Great. Go ahead and put those, 3 dots or 3 lines or 3 whatever, just to show that there's 3 sounds. Okay, now go to the first sound. What's the first sound? Okay, what says right? Oh, M says very good. Go ahead and write M. It's a long process, but after you've done this procedure over and over and over and over again, it just becomes second nature. So now you're teaching your brain how to spell. What's the sound I hear? What's the letter that goes with that? And onward it goes. So spelling is very much intertwined with reading, and it's just as important as we're going through. And it's very important to be taught in the same lesson, in the same skill, with the same skill. Okay. And then we move on into reading and spelling irregular words because they're going to happen. There's a saying that the English language is 50% exceptions. That's actually very much incorrect. So there are actually a lot of spelling patterns, and we teach those spelling patterns. So the actual amount of irregular words is actually more in the single digits than it is 50%. But they do occur, and so we do want to be able to help students to have the strategies. We use a lot of different memory tactics to try to help them be able to read those irregular words. And then we go into morphology. So yes, even your kindergarten student can understand the simple S suffix, right? So if we add an S onto a suffix, or add the suffix S onto a word, that means we have more than one. And so we can start that understanding of morphology in the very beginning. And we do that because it is very important. We add them on ever so slowly as we get more into the curriculum. So morphology, vocabulary piece. And so now we have all of these skills, right? Great, we can stop there. No, no, we need to go into the application of that. So what does that look like now? What do those words look like in the context of a sentence? So now we're going to be looking at sentences and sentence structure, having a capital at the beginning, having a period or a question mark or an exclamation mark at the end, and in what instances we'll have those punctuation marks. So we have that in there, but we're also now reading in the context of a sentence. And you're probably thinking, well, how are you going to create a sentence? We're going to use, well, very simple sentences at first, but as we've learned skills, now we can create words, or these are all real words. We don't do nonsense word sentences, but these are all words that are using skills that we've already learned. And so it's very controlled text, and it gives them cumulative practice at being able to read what they've read before, but now they're also learning or practicing the skill that we've been working on this entire time. That application piece is so important. It bridges the gap between, okay, I know letters and sounds and I kind of know how to spell them now, but what does this look like in real life? So how am I going to be reading these words? So we learn that in the context of reading sentences and reading paragraphs. So we can actually, once we kind of build up our skills, we can now read longer text. Um, so we're doing that in the context of the session. And then our very last piece, we're writing sentences because that's important. That is the application piece of spelling. It's great to spell, but let's see what that looks like in a sentence form. So now we're writing sentences, again, controlled. It's all controlled text. It's using skills that we have already learned, and that's it. Nothing else. And as we get as we get, basically, we've gone through a more kind of basic structured literacy program. We can then get into writing paragraphs. We don't often have the time or the time ability to go into more paragraph writing in the context of our sessions, because writing paragraphs really requires a proficiency in spelling at the sentence level. If we can't spell words proficiently, and I mean basically all the different skills that we'd be teaching throughout a structured literacy curriculum, if we don't have a solid grasp on those, we're going to have a much harder time being able to handle paragraphs. So think back to what we were talking about, overload. So we want to make sure that we're not overloading our students. So if they're still trying to solidify the process of spelling those particular words, and we're stretching them a little bit to even spell it in a sentence, trying to hold on to that and spell an entire paragraph or write an entire paragraph, that's frustration zone.